Hi, my name is Julianne, and today I will be wrapping up all the books, movies, and TV shows that I have read or watched this month. Just so you know, the first 4 books are library books, so I don't have them to show. I read 9 books this month. The first book I read was Frostbite by Rochelle Mead, and this is the second book in the Vampire Academy series, and it was really good. My only complaint, my biggest complaint of this book was that the plot line and the villain weren't as solid as in the first book. But overall, I thought it was a really good story. And Rose, I may not have agreed with every decision she made, but I respected it and I understood her character. I really love Mason, present tense. There was this one moment where Rose was all drunk and stuff, and Mason was like, she was like, oh, let's go have sex or something, and he was like, no, you're drunk. And I wanted to stand up and cheer because this is finally someone who understands that being drunk means you can't give consent. And I don't know, and it just made me love Mason even more. And I love him just because he's so funny and he just brings that comedic side to the story. The ending had epic scenes, and so I like those scenes. Like, I don't want to say anything to spoil you, but there were some scenes that were really good, and then the villain just, to me, just felt flat, and it felt slightly anticlimactic. So the next thing I read was City of Glass, and this is by Cassandra Clare. I hate City of Bones. I hate that book. I hate it with a burning passion. City of Ashes, it did get better. The characters got slightly less annoying. In City of Glass, I hate Jace less than I did in the first book, but I still don't really like him. I don't really like Clary. I don't really like their relationship. It annoys me. I love Simon. He's always been funny, and I loved him like the entire series so far. But I will admit that City of Glass it's pretty good. It's actually not that bad. I can't commit to liking the series yet, but I think that City of Glass, it was good. I was spoiled on a lot of things. So, like, I saw a bunch of stuff coming, and I saw it either because I was spoiled or because I can just guess off of those spoils. But I still think they were really good plot twists that Cassandra Clare had thrown in, and if I hadn't been spoiled, I would have been shocked. City of Glass also had a really awesome epilogue, like one of the best epilogues I've ever read. It just wrapped up everything so nicely, so kudos to Cassandra Clare on that. She has gotten funnier throughout the series. I would say overall that I'm going to say what everyone else has been saying, and that the series gets better. And yeah, I'm going to be reading Infernal Devices and the rest of the Mortal Instruments series at some point in the future. Next book I read was Go Ask Alice, and I thought this was an interesting read. So it's about this girl who becomes a drug addict, and she chronicles that in a diary. But what I had a problem with was after I read it, I found out that the author of this story, not the person writing the diary, but the anonymous writer, she kind of lied. Like, it's not really a true story. She kind of made stuff up, so it shouldn't have been marketed as a true story. So before going into it, just know that not everything that happens in the story is true, but I still recommend it to read. The last library book I read was Feed by Michael Anderson. Oh boy, was this book amazing. It was so good. I first heard about Feed through a Goodreads review on Proxy by Alex London. They're talking about how the biofeed and Proxy is like the same in the feed, and it is similar, but that's like the only similarity between those two books. I saw Feed in the library, I was like, I should check this out, and I'm really glad I did. It's basically a dystopian novel told from the perspective of this kid, Titus, and just know that even though this is dystopian, it is not one of those books where you got your strong female character trying to take down the government and there's rebels. It's not like that. It's more about Michael Anderson trying to open up her eyes a little bit, and it's more about Titus getting his eyes open and realizing that Feed isn't all that. I don't want to go into more details because this is a wrap-up video, and I'm thinking about maybe doing a full review on Feed. But Michael Anderson is basically trying to open up our eyes and to show us that we're so distracted by our electronics that we don't even realize that it's killing us, but we ignore that because we're so focused on the screen. So this book is very thought-provoking, and I think it's just such an interesting read to look at and to analyze, and it's really good. And I highly recommend it. Now, this book I actually own. It's What We Remember, What We Forget. And this is a collection of poems, essays, short stories by some of the best teen authors in the United States. They're the winners of the Art and Writing Awards for the Scholastic. And I thought it was a very interesting read. It's actually a reread. I like rereading it every once in a while, and I realize that as I get older, I start to understand and relate more to the teens that are in this book, whether it's through the fictional ones or the real stories. And I find that on rereading it, I still love A Slice of Arizona Hell by Peter Gray. Like, I just love that story. I don't know, there's just something about the way it's written. I also really like An Open Letter to the Suicidal by Evan Goldstein. I thought it was very well written, and just everything in this book is really good. I would recommend it. I don't know if you can find it in Barnes & Nobles now. I think I got it in like 2008 or something, so it's kind of old. So another book I read was The Haunting of Elizabeth Cray by Chris Wooding. This book I've been wanting for so long, and I've been wanting to read it for so much, and I finally got to read it, and I feel so happy that I did. I love Chris Wooding. He's one of my favorites. He's up there with Rick Riordan, McBride. I love him so much. So this book is like if the Monstrumologist and the Mortal Instrument series had an English baby. It takes place in England during like an alternate version of England during what I believe is the 1800s. The main character is Nathaniel Fox, and he is a witch hunter. Witch hunters are kind of like shadow hunters, but shadow hunters hunt demons while witch hunters hunt more of like a monster type of stuff. The monsters are very unique and interesting, and it's very cool to read. Just as a note, even though I'm comparing The Haunting of Elizabeth Cray to other stories, it is on itself a very unique story. It's a standalone, by the way, so that's good. You can just read it, get attached to the characters, and then be done, and not have to, invest yourself into an entire series. This book has it all. You have your serial killers, you got your monsters, an Illuminati-like cult that wants to destroy the world, and no love triangle. So, in short, this book is amazing. Chris Wooding is amazing at world building, so, you just really learn a lot, and you get so wrapped up in the story. It is kind of scary, but I read most of it at night, and during the moments, while reading it, you kind of get scared, but then after reading it, you're totally fine, and it's not like it'll keep you up, afraid that something's gonna attack you. If you're kind of like get scared easily, you might want to read it during the day, but it's not so scary that you can't read it. It was so good. And Nathaniel and Elizabeth Cray, so cute. I love them together. It's like the one canon ship that we get from Chris Wooding. Another book I read was actually a novella. So this is a novella for Hold Me Closer, Necromancer. It follows Ashley and her childhood friend Matt, and it was really cool to read just to see more into Ashley's past and how she came along to become a harbinger. If you've read Hold Me Closer, Necromancer, you should definitely read this book. The next book I read was Guardian by Alex London, and it was so good. It took me forever to finally buy this book and then to finally read it, and I'm so glad that I finally got a chance to read this book. Proxy was really amazing, and I loved it so much, and now I finally read Guardians, and it was a great conclusion. Kind of wish there was more. And seriously, the one time I want a dystopian story to be a trilogy. Trilogies are so overrated, but in this one I need another book. I have the same complaint as I did with Frostbite. I just felt like the plot and the antagonist was not as solid as the first book. The only thing that was driving the story really was the romance, and for me, the romance just made up for everything, which is the first time I've ever said that. Romance in stories are kind of annoying. Action is what is driving the story, not the romance side of it. And in Proxy, I loved that there was no romance, and in this one, I love Liam and Sid. I ship them so hard. They're so cute together. You should definitely read this book. If you read Proxy, and you should read Proxy if you haven't read Proxy yet, and then read Guardian. Alex London is amazing at storytelling, and I just loved how he describes everything. Just know that the plot wasn't as good as the plot in Proxy, but it's still amazing. The last book I read this month, or, well, I haven't finished it yet, is The World of the End by Ofer Touche Gafla. This book is so good. Oh my goodness. I got it off Book Outlet. I was like, let me try it out. It sounds interesting, and it's so good. This book is like a murder mystery thriller taking place in a sci-fi dystopian version of the afterlife. Yeah, I'm really glad that this got translated into English. I love everything that's happened so far. It was basically about this guy, Ben, his wife dies, and he's all depressed about it, so he's like, you know what, I'll kill myself and I'll meet her in the afterlife. And problem is, he can't find her. So he employs, or like he gets help from a detective to try to find her. And it's not uncommon. Like, the afterlife is a really big place, so not finding her is not uncommon, but he needs someone's help to find her. And you get to learn more about the afterlife, and it sounds very interesting place. It almost sounds like real life, but, you know, without dying part. Although there is this thing where you press this button 7 times, so it's called 7/3, and it's basically committing suicide, but it's like an eternal sleep. So I thought that was interesting, and afterlife is not anything like you would expect. Ofer Touche Gafla really spins the story that's very intriguing, and there's sometimes like random characters or plot lines that are going on. You're like, what is going on is interesting, but how does that pertain to the story? And then you'll get to the end of the chapter, and you'll be like, oh my goodness, it all makes sense now. So yeah, like literally I gasped at like the end of every chapter. It's just everything that comes together. It's amazing. I would say the one word that actually sums up this entire story is intriguing, because you're just like, what is happening now? I'm so interested, what's gonna happen? So you get in the minds of many different people. Like, you're in the mind of Ben, you're in the head of this woman who's been ignored by society basically her entire life. Like, people don't even notice she exists. You're in the head of this pedophile, you're in the head of this mother. So you get to see so many different characters and personalities, and it just all comes together into this one epic book. Yeah, so those were the books that I read this month in June. So now on to TV shows. There are 3 shows that I wanted to talk about that I watched this month. So the first one I wanted to talk about really quickly is Soul Eater. This show was so good. Like, I started at the beginning of the school year, so it took me a long time to finally finish it, but there was other shows and life just in general, but I finally got to watch it and finish it, and I really, really loved it. It's my first anime, so I'm kind of interested to get into this genre. It's basically, there's a bunch of people who are like normal people, and then they kind of like team up with people who can turn into weapons, and they are trying to take down, first of all, Medusa, and then Madness later, reincarnation of Madness. It sounds weird, but I seriously love the show, and Soul Maka for life. So the next show I wanted to talk about is Once Upon a Time. I only watched the first 3 seasons because that's what's available on Netflix. I do want to watch the 4th season, so hopefully Netflix gets the 4th season on soon. It's basically, for anyone who doesn't know, a bunch of fairy tale retellings, and it's just amazing. It's so good. It might take you a couple episodes to get into it, but by the 4th episode I got so addicted to the show I watched 26 episodes in 6 days. It was insane. Yeah, there's so many twists in this show. My favorite villain is Peter Pan. Like, those eyebrows though. I love him so much. That accent. I still can't. I laugh every time he like talks because he always raises his eyebrow. It's so funny. And then the last show I want to talk about is Breakout King. Okay, so this show is like Convicts are trying to catch convicts. So someone breaks out of jail, and the Breakout Kings, who are convicts, they go chasing after these fugitives, and for every fugitive they catch and bring back to prison, they get a month off their sentence, which is good, especially for Lloyd, who has 25 years. His story is so sad. I love Lloyd. He's Mary from Psych, and before you say it, his father's name was Mary, and his father's name before him was Mary, and his father's name was Craig. This show is so freaking good, and what I loved was there was a woman whose name was Julianne. My name's Julianne. No one has my name, ever, especially with, like, fictional characters, and it just felt good to have someone who had my same name. Seriously, you have to watch Breakout Kings. It is so good. There's 2 seasons. It's amazing, and I love the show so much. And the movie that I wanted to talk about was Jurassic World. I don't want to go into too much details. I already made a review on this, so I guess I'll link that down below. Jurassic World was amazing though, and I loved it so much, and I'm so glad that they continued the franchise. Overall, I thought it was an awesome movie, and you should go see it. Those are all the books, TV shows, and movies that I either read or watched in June. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!